Over 15.1 million Americans are set to lose their health care, while billionaires rake in more than $136 billion from Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. One-third of working-class families will be pushed into crisis as rural hospitals face mass shutdowns across the nation. In a live congressional showdown, Jasmine Crockett corners J.D. Vance with fury so powerful it shakes the chamber to its core. And the haunting question remains, when 15 million lives and hundreds of billions of dollars hang in the balance, can one woman's voice ignite justice, or will this become democracy's death sentence? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. The screen flickers alive with breaking news banners. A split-screen montage erupts, CNN anchors shouting headlines, Fox commentators spinning defenses, MSNBC flashing red graphics of plummeting healthcare access. In the background, raw street footage rolls. Chants echo through the night as protesters march outside hospitals clutching signs, "Healthcare is a right," and "Stop the billionaire bill." The nose collides, a storm of voices rising into chaos, the kind of chaos that grabs a nation by the throat. Camera cuts to a middle-aged mother in Kansas, cradling an asthma inhaler like it's gold. She tells a reporter, voice trembling, "They say my insurance will vanish next year. That means my 9-year-old, won't breathe if this bill becomes law." The screen freezes on her tear-streaked face, then slams into bold numbers. 15.1 million Americans will lose health care. Seconds later, another number explodes across the screen. Top 10% gain $13,600 per year. The contrast is violent, obscene, and impossible to ignore. News anchors cut in rapid fire. The CBO confirms the poorest Americans stand to lose $1,200 a year under Trump's Big Beautiful Bill. Another voice interrupts. This could be the single most unpopular piece of legislation in the last 50 years. Clips of angry town halls flash, ordinary Americans screaming at their representatives, demanding answers, holding up hospital bills that look like death sentences. The music builds, heavy percussion pounding like a heartbeat running out of time. And then, the spotlight shifts. Jasmine Crockett appears on screen. Not in a glamorous interview, not in a rehearsed campaign ad, but in the raw chaos of the protests, walking shoulder to shoulder with families, hugging a child clutching a teddy bear outside a shuttered clinic. Her voice cuts through the noise, fiery and unapologetic. "This is not just bad policy. This is blood on paper. And I will not sit silent while Trump and J.D. Vance sell out our people." Reporters swarm. Cameras flash. Her name trends across platforms. #Crockett vs Trump. In the media swirl, J.D. Vance plays the loyal soldier, touring states, promising that Trump's bill will reward working families, but the cracks show. On cable talk shows, pundits smirk. He's trying too hard. He's cosplaying as Trump's heir, but the charisma isn't there. He looks like cardboard. Meanwhile, behind the nose, the Capitol prepares for a hearing unlike any in modern memory. Security is tightened, networks advertise live coverage, and whispers spread that Trump himself might intervene. Not through the usual press releases, but in real time, on camera, a confrontation waiting to detonate. The montage ends with a slow zoom into Jasmine sitting alone in her office, the city skyline behind her, stacks of papers scattered like weapons. She studies the CBO report, circles numbers in red, then leans back in her chair. For a long moment, silence, her hand clenches into a fist. She whispers to herself, barely audible but sharp as a blade, "They can silence me, but not the truth." Fade to black, a single question burns across the screen. Can one voice cut through the nose of an entire political machine? The morning after the protests, the screen cuts to a grand stage in Georgia. Lights blaze, banners flutter, and there he is, J.D. Vance, stepping to the podium in a crisp navy suit. The crowd is rehearsed, waving flags, chanting on cue. He smiles like a man who knows the cameras are watching, chin raised, voice steady. "This bill," he declares, "is about the American worker. It's about putting families first, not Washington elites." The applause rises, but the eyes in the audience tell another story, glazed, unconvinced, waiting for something real that never comes. Cable news eats it up. One anchor smirks. "He's polished, yes. But there's something hollow there." The cardboard charisma, a shadow of Trump without the fire. The phrase catches fire online. Memes flood Twitter. Vance's stiff smile pasted on a cereal box, captions reading now with less flavor. His performance looks more like an audition than a conviction, and the public sees through it. Yet behind the political theater, reality bleeds. In rural Ohio, a farmer leans against his rusted truck, voice breaking. "My wife's chemo is covered by Medicaid. They cut that, she's gone. You tell me what a tax break for billionaires is worth then." In West Virginia, a nurse holds back tears outside a clinic. "We're the only hospital for 60 miles. If this bill passes, we close." That's not numbers. That's funerals. These aren't polished speeches. They're raw wounds, and the cameras linger long enough to make viewers squirm. Back in Washington, the stage is being set for the ultimate clash. The Capitol whispers grow louder. Trump's man versus Crockett. Headlines tease the coming storm. The cardboard charisma faces his match. Networks announce special coverage, knowing the nation will tune in, hungry for blood, hungry for truth. And in the quiet hours, Jasmine prepares. Her office is dim, lit only by a desk lamp. Papers are spread like battle maps, red ink circling numbers like targets. She reads every line of the CBO report, every devastating statistic, then closes her eyes. Outside, the city hums, but inside the silence is suffocating. She leans forward, whispering to herself, "They can silence me, but not the truth." Her reflection stares back from the darkened window, not just a congresswoman, but a warrior sharpening her blade before battle. Somewhere in the distance, a clock tolls midnight, each chime echoing like a warning. She looks down at her notes, then back up at her own eyes, and breathes, steady but fierce. The screen fades to black, leaving one question hanging like a guillotine over the nation. What happens when truth collides with power? Morning breaks over Capitol Hill, but it feels less like dawn and more like the drumbeat of war. Helicopters rumble above, sweeping spotlights across a sea of protesters that flood the marble steps. On one side, chants thunder, "Healthcare is a right." Their banners bleed red slogans into the air. On the other, counter-protesters were stand with Trump, waving giant flags like weapons. The two tides crash against each other, separated only by metal barricades and nervous police gripping shields as though the slightest spark could ignite an inferno. Reporters swarm the scene, voices urgent, cameras trembling in the crush. We are live outside the Capitol where tensions are reaching a fever pitch. Another anchor interrupts. Unconfirmed reports suggest former President Trump himself may address the chamber remotely. If true, this will be unprecedented. Whispers ripple like electricity. Trump might speak. Trump might break the silence. Trump might throw gasoline on a fire already burning out of control. Inside, the corridors of power vibrate with footsteps and murmurs. Staffers clutch folders like shields. Aides rush between offices, their faces tail with dread. Security tightens every doorway. Metal detectors shriek. Capitol Police line the halls as if bracing for invasion. Every whispered conversation ends the same way. "It's going to explode today." Then, the cameras pivot, the double doors of the chamber swing open. Gasps ripple across the gallery. There she is. Jasmine Crockett strides in, black suit sharp as steel, her eyes unflinching, her every step echoing like the crack of a gavel. Flashbulbs erupt in staccato bursts, capturing her face, her resolve, her fire. Reporters shout questions, voices colliding in a frenzy. "Congresswoman, are you ready to take on J.D. Vance? Do you fear Trump's response?" She does not flinch, she does not answer. She walks straight down the aisle, the air bending around her like the pull of gravity. J.D. Vance is already seated at the long mahogany table, lips curled into a practiced smirk, adjusting his tie as though this were theater and he the star. But the eyes in the room betray him. Reporters, staff, even his own allies glance nervously at the cameras, waiting to see how long that smirk will last once the storm begins. Jasmine reaches her seat. For one suspended moment, silence falls across the chamber, thick and suffocating, the kind of silence before thunder cracks. She lays her notes down, smooths the page, then slowly clenches her fist, knuckles whitening. Leaning forward, barely above a whisper, a sharp enough to slice through the tension, she says, "It begins now." The screen fades, the hum of protests smelling into a roar, and one haunting question hangs over America like a blade waiting to drop. Will this be her triumph, or her downfall? The chamber doors thunder shut, sealing the room like a vault. Every camera lens swings toward J.D. Vance as he rises from his chair, one hand gripping the thick folder stamped "Big Beautiful Bill" in gold letters, as if the shine of the cover could hide the rot within. He straightens his tie, flashes a rehearsed smile, and walks toward the podium with the swagger of a man who believes the stage is his. The room tightens, Republicans lean forward, their eyes gleaming, already preparing their applause lines. Democrats fold their arms, lips pressed thin, bracing for the performance they've seen 1,000 times before. Vance clears his throat, lets the silence stretch until it groans under its own weight, then begins. "My fellow Americans," he declares, his voice smooth but empty, "we have been fed lies. We have been poisoned by so-called experts and their atrocious reports." He slams the CBO document on the podium with a thud that echoes like a gavel. This is not truth. This is trash disguised as math. A wave of clapping erupts from the Republican side, thunderous and synchronized, as if choreographed. They rise to their feet, pounding their desks, grinning for the cameras. Across the aisle, Democrats roll their eyes, some scoffing openly, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The clash of applause and disdain collides in the chamber like steel against steel. Vance leans forward, voice rising, polished to the point of artificiality. "The Big Beautiful Bill is not about billionaires, not about elites. It's about working families. It's about giving Americans what they deserve, a tax code that rewards hard work instead of punishing it." He pauses, waits for applause, and it comes, loud, empty, hollow. The camera flashes catch his smile, but up close it looks forced, tight, cracking at the edges. In the gallery, reporters scribble furiously, some exchanging glances that say everything without words. It's a show. He's selling an illusion. On Twitter, live captions roll in. J.D. Vance, cardboard charisma on full display, memes spread before his speech even ends, his face photoshopped onto a puppet's body, strings dangling above. And then the lens finds Jasmine. She sits still, her eyes locked on Vance like a hawk on prey. Her fingers tap the table, slow, deliberate, each beat like the tick of a time bomb. She doesn't roll her eyes. She doesn't shake her head. She doesn't move. She watches, silent, unflinching, fury simmering beneath the surface, a volcano holding back the eruption, waiting for the perfect second to explode. Vance lifts the bill high in the air, his voice trembling with manufactured triumph. "This is our future," Republicans roar. But in the stillness on the other side of the room, Jasmine leans forward ever so slightly, her eyes burning with a promise. The camera lingers on her face, the silence heavier than the applause, the tension suffocating. And the nation watching feels the question rising like a storm it cannot escape. Is America buying his performance, or waiting for the mask to crack? J.D. Vance adjusts his papers, lowering his voice to a softer tone, as if shifting from politician to preacher. "Let me tell you about a man I met in Ohio," he begins, his cadence slow, carefully measured. "A father of 3, working 2 jobs, barely making ends meet. He told me, 'Mr. Vance, I don't need a handout. I need a government that finally rewards the sweat on my brow.'" The chamber goes quiet, Republicans nodding solemnly, some even placing their hands over their hearts, as if the moment carried sacred weight. He continues, stacking story upon story: a waitress in Georgia who can't afford her rent, a small business owner in Texas strangled by taxes, a veteran in Pennsylvania longing for a break. Each tale polished, rehearsed, dripping with empathy on the surface, yet too flawless, too clean, like lines read from a script crafted in a war room far from the grit of reality. Across the aisle, Democrats shift uncomfortably. One leans to another, muttering under his breath, loud enough for the microphones to catch. Scripted lies. Another rolls her eyes so hard it draws muffled laughter from the press gallery. The tension thickens, a theater where half the room plays along while the other half sees. Up in the media balcony, a young reporter's phone buzzes. He types a text furiously, sending it into the bloodstream of live updates. He looks rehearsed, too clean, too fake. It's like watching an actor forget he's not on a stage. Within seconds, the message trends on social platforms, hashtags multiplying, the phrase cardboard charisma spreading like wildfire once again. But the cameras don't linger on Vance's smile, they find Jasmine. Sitting silent, her pen races across the margins of her notes, scrawling words like daggers, circles, arrows, underlines in furious red ink. Her jaw clenches. Every line she writes feels less like preparation and more like a countdown. The audience can sense it, even through the lens. She isn't just taking notes. She is sharpening a blade. Vance, oblivious, leans harder into his performance. This bill is relief for working families. It is dignity for the forgotten. It is justice for those who've carried this nation on their backs while elites mocked them. His hand rises dramatically, palm open, as if offering salvation. Republicans rise in applause, the sound deafening, echoing like thunder. Yet beneath the roar, a ripple of unease stirs, because the louder the clapping, the emptier the words begin to sound. The camera cuts to Jasmine one last time. She stops writing, closes her folder with a deliberate snap, and lifts her gaze. Her eyes lock on Vance with surgical precision. No words, just silence. The kind of silence that feels heavier than any speech, heavier than applause, heavier than the hollow promises filling the chamber. And as the nation watches, breath caught in its throat, the question hangs like a dagger suspended midair. How do you fight a lie dressed as hope? J.D. Vance's smile sharpens into a sneer. He shifts his weight, rests both hands on the podium, and lets his voice rise with mocking ease. And of course, he says, pausing for effect, the critics will whine. The so-called experts will clutch their pearls. The liberal elites in Washington will cry about numbers they don't even understand. He chuckles, the sound hollow but cutting, drawing laughter from Republican benches. But let's be honest, these people have never worked a day in their lives. They don't know what it means to put in 12 hours of sweat to build something real. They only know how to sit in ivory towers and look down on the people they claim to represent. Applause breaks out again, a rolling wave of claps and cheers, some members pounding the desk with fists to amplify the noise. But the echo feels off, forced, like a laugh track played too loud. The cameras pan across the Democratic side. No movement, no sound. Only stillness, an icy wall against Vance's theatrics. Vance leans back from the microphone, savoring the moment, his smirk widening. So go ahead, he taunts, write your angry op-eds, stage your little protests, post your hashtags. Because out here, in the real America, people know this bill is for them. And no amount of elitist hand-wringing will change that. His voice lands like a gavel, heavy and smug. He waits for the applause again, but this time it comes softer, scatter, the rhythm faltering as the chamber itself seems to hesitate. Then it happens, a pause, a silence so deep it slices through the room like glass. Reporters stop scribbling, phones stop buzzing. The applause dies out mid-clap. For a long, unbearable moment, it's as though the oxygen has been pulled from the air. Every camera lens shifts in the same direction toward Jasmine Crockett. She has not moved in minutes, her posture rigid, her gaze locked. And now, in one slow motion, she shifts in her seat. A simple gesture, yet it crashed through the silence like a lightning strike. The room tightens, allies hold their breath. Even Vance, for the first time, blinks a little too fast. Jasmine straightens her notes, slides them into a neat pile, and places her hand deliberately on the microphone. Her jaw clenches, her eyes blaze with controlled fury. She doesn't raise her voice yet, doesn't move with haste. She leans in just enough that her words cut the silence with surgical precision. Mr. Vance, may I respond? The air detonates, gasps ripple across the chamber, reporters lunge for their phones, cameras zoom in as if drawn by gravity. Everyone in the room knows the temperature has shifted, that the storm is no longer coming, it is already here. And the question ignites across America, spreading faster than any applause or speech. Can one sentence flip the script? The chamber freezes in anticipation, every eye locked on Jasmine as her voice finally cuts through the stale air. She leans closer to the microphone, her tone calm but laced with steel. Mr. Vance, she begins, you talk about working families, about dignity, about justice. But let's speak in the one language that never lies. Numbers. She lifts the CBO report and slaps it against the table, the crack echoing like a gunshot. Under this so-called big beautiful bill, the poorest Americans, the ones making $30,000 a year, will lose $1,200 annually. Meanwhile, the top 10%, they gain $13,600 every single year. That isn't relief, that isn't reform, that is theft. That is a scam for billionaires. Gasps rip through the chamber like shrapnel. Gasps rip through the chamber like shrapnel. Cameras flash in rapid staccato bursts, reporters scrambling to capture every word. every flicker of her expression. On the Republican side, murmurs rise, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats, others shaking their heads furiously. Democrats lean forward, nodding, their faces lit with a flicker of fire. Jasmine doesn't pause, her voice sharpens, rising with the rhythm of outrage. 15.1 million Americans will lose their health care. 15.1 million. That is not an opinion. That is the Congressional Budget Office, signed by a Republican appointee. You can call it atrocious, you can call it trash, but you cannot call it false. And every American watching this broadcast knows exactly what this means. Hospitals closing, mothers skipping treatment, children gasping for air because an inhaler suddenly out of reach. The gallery erupts in whispers, the press gallery buzzing like a hive, social media detonates in real time. Hashtags blaze across screens. Hashtag scam for billionaires. Hashtag Crockett strikes. Hashtag 15 million lives. News tickers flash red banners. Crockett, big beautiful bill is a scam for billionaires. Jasmine slams the report down once more, her eyes locked on Vance. And yet here you stand, Mr. Vance, smiling, smirking, selling your cardboard charisma to the cameras, while families in Ohio and Texas and West Virginia sit at their kitchen tables, wondering which bill to pay and which medicine to skip. This isn't leadership, this is cruelty dressed up in a suit. The silence that follows is deafening. Vance's smirk falters for the first time, his jaw tightening as his hand grips the podium. A Republican from the back tries to interject, shouting, "Out of order." But the gavel slams, and the chair barks. The gentlewoman has the floor. Jasmine takes a breath, steady but fiery, her eyes sweeping the room as if daring anyone to look away. You call this bill beautiful? Tell that to the 15 million who will bury loved ones because of it. Tell them where the beauty lies. Tell them how billionaires pocket billions while their children die. The chamber hangs on her words, the air thick with shock and fury. And as the cameras broadcast her face into every living room in America, the question trembles on the edge of every tongue. What happens when truth is too sharp to ignore? The chamber hasn't recovered from the blow of her numbers when Jasmine leans back, lets the silence linger, then twists the knife. You know what this is, Mr. Vance, she says, her voice low but cutting. This is charisma of cardboard. Flimsy, fake, selling a rotten product to desperate people. You stand here waving glossy packaging while the contents inside reek of betrayal. The words crash into the room like a hammer through glass. Republicans erupt, voices colliding in a cacophony of outrage. Outrageous, disgraceful. Withdraw those words. The chamber shakes with shouts, a wall of no's rising to drown her out. The chair slams the gavel, wood cracking against wood, barking order, order, but Jasmine does not flinch. She holds her ground, her eyes blazing, a half-smile daring anyone to silence her. On the Democratic side, Congressman Brendan Bowe leans back in his chair, unable to suppress a smirk. Under his breath, just loud enough for cameras nearby to catch, he mutters, "She nailed him." The remark circulates instantly, ricocheting across social media like wildfire. Hashtag "She nailed him" trending within minutes. J.D. Vance stiffens, the smirk he once wore curdling into something brittle. He slams his hand on the podium, trying to seize control of the moment. Point of order, Mr. Chair. This is. His voice trembles just enough for microphones to catch the crack. But Jasmine cuts him off before he can finish. She doesn't shout, she doesn't raise her hand. She simply leans forward, her tone cold and surgical, slicing through his words with lethal precision. "Sit down. I'm not finished." The chamber falls into stunned silence, gasps ripple through the gallery. Even reporters, trained to mask emotion, gape wide-eyed. The cameras zoom closer, capturing the exact moment the power dynamic shifts, the instant the predator becomes the prey. Vance, cornered and exposed, hesitates. For a single second too long, he does not respond, and in that hesitation, he loses. Jasmine seizes the silence, her voice swelling with righteous fury. You came here to play salesman for billionaires, dressed in borrowed bravado, peddling lies like snake oil at a county fair. But America is not buying it, not today. Not when lives are at stake. Your cardboard act can't hide the stench of this bill, and the people watching at home know it. Republicans pound their desks, shouting for order, demanding she yield. The chair hammers again, desperate to restore control. But the roar only feeds the spectacle. The electricity coursing through every camera lens, every phone streaming live, every American glued to the screen. And there sits J.D. Vance, his face tight, his eyes darting, caught between fury and fear, realizing in real time that the floor he thought belonged to him has been ripped away. The air hangs heavy, the chamber on the edge of chaos, and the nation watching holds its breath as the question surges like a storm front. Will he survive this humiliation? The uproar still rattles the chamber when Jasmine raises a single sheet of paper, her voice suddenly lowering, the sharpness softening into something even more dangerous, raw truth. "Let me share a voice that cannot be here today," she says, holding the paper aloft. A doctor from a rural town in West Virginia, the only hospital for 60 miles. She wrote to me last week. The room quiets, curiosity pulling against defiance. Jasmine begins to read, her voice steady but trembling with weight. "Congresswoman, I fear for my patients. If this bill passes, our hospital will close its doors. That means heart attack victims will die on the road. Mothers with complications will not make it to another facility in time. Children with asthma will suffocate because the nearest will be hours away. Please, I beg you, do not let them kill us with this law." The chamber falls into silence so profound it feels unnatural, the kind that makes the sound of a breath, a shuffle, a cough echo like thunder. In the gallery, an older woman wipes her eyes with a trembling handkerchief. A staffer lowers his head, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Reporters freeze, their pens hovering mid-scribble, as if afraid to break the spell. Jasmine lowers the paper slowly, her eyes sweeping across the room. "This is not politics," she whispers, her voice so quiet that the microphones amplify it like a secret shared with the nation. "This is survival." For a long moment, no one moves. The power of numbers had struck earlier, but this was blood and bone, flesh and breath. Even Republicans shift in their seats, some biting their lips, others staring down at the desks as if the wood might swallow them whole. The cameras zoom in, broadcasting every flicker of emotion to living rooms across America. Social media feeds erupt in a flood of heartbreak. #This is survival trends instantly, accompanied by images of rural hospitals, of crying nurses, of families clutching medical bills. The nation is no longer watching a debate, it is watching a reckoning. And then, the lens finds J.D. Vance, the man who strutted to the podium, who waved his bill like a banner of glory, now sits slumped in his chair. His face glistens with sweat under the harsh lights. His hand trembles as he reaches for a glass of water, missing the rim before steadying himself. The smirk is gone, replaced by a tightness in his jaw, a flicker of panic in his eyes. He is cornered, exposed, stripped bare before the country. The chamber breathes again, but it is not applause, not noise. It is a heavy exhale of recognition. Something has shifted, something irreversible. Jasmine leans back, her hands steady, her eyes burning with calm fire. And across the airwaves, the question echoes into every home, every heart, impossible to silence. Is this his breaking point, or just the beginning? The silence still hangs heavy from Jasmine's last words, when suddenly, the chamber lights flicker. A low hum buzzes through the speakers, screens at the front of the room sparking to life. At first it's static, just noise, but then, his face fills the screen. Donald Trump, larger than life, glowing across the chamber in real time. The audience gasps, reporters leap to their feet, and a chorus of shouts erupts from the gallery. Breaking news, Trump live, Trump live. His voice blasts through the speakers, booming with that familiar cadence, each syllable like a hammer. Jasmine Crockett is trash, she is a disgrace to America. J.D. Vance speaks for real Americans, the workers, the forgotten, the patriots. The words ricochet around the chamber, amplified not just by the sound system, but by the sheer audacity of his intrusion. Chaos detonates. Republicans roar with approval, some pounding their desks, others throwing their fists in the air. Democrats shout back, waving their hands, demanding the fee be cut. Reporters scream over one another, cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. The chair slams the gavel again and again, his voice cracking. Order. Order. But order has fled the building. Trump leans closer to his camera, his face filling the screen so large it seems to swallow the chamber. His tone drips with venom, his eyes blazing. This congresswoman doesn't care about you. She doesn't care about the American dream. She only cares about herself, her headlines, her power. But we are building the greatest economy the world has ever seen. And J.D. Vance is helping me do it. She is nothing. He is everything. The room fractures into two Americas in one building. On one side, Republicans leap to their feet, chanting USA, USA. Like a rally has broken out inside Congress. On the other, Democrats shout back, their voices furious, calling shame. And cut the feet, the clash reverberates through every camera, every broadcast, every phone in the nation. And through it all, Jasmine does not move. She sits perfectly still, her hands folded, her eyes locked on the screen, her face calm as marble. The storm rages around her, but she is the still point, the center of the chaos. The cameras catch her expression, not shaken, not intimidated, but sharpened, as if Trump's words have only lit the fuse she's been waiting to ignite. The feed continues, Trump's voice climbing louder, almost shrieking, "She is trash. She is a fraud. She should be thrown out of this chamber and out of this country." The words hang heavy, vicious, searing through the air. And then, as the chamber teeters on collapse, Jasmine finally leans toward her microphone, her voice low, her tone like steel wrapped in fire. She does not shout. She does not match his volume. She cuts through with precision. "Mr. Trump, if speaking truth makes me trash, then I will wear that name with pride. Because the real garbage is a law that kills millions while billionaires dine on gold." The chamber erupts again, but this time the noise is drowned beneath the collective gasp of a nation watching live. And the question sears itself into every screen, every heart. Can Jasmine hold her ground against Trump himself? Trump leans closer to his camera, his face filling the massive screen, blotting out the chamber itself. His voice drips with venom, booming so loud the microphones crackle. "Look at her, Jasmine Crockett. A loudmouth disgrace. She doesn't belong here. She's a joke, a clown screaming to get attention. People like her destroy this country with no sound lies." Gasps ripple across the chamber, followed instantly by roars. Republicans pound their desks in agreement, some shouting "Sit down, Crockett." Democrats explode in outrage, yelling over one another, "Shame, shame." The chair slams the gavel desperately, but the noise grows into a storm that shakes the very walls. And in the middle of the chaos, Jasmine smiles. Not a warm smile, not a flinch of amusement, but a cold, razor-edged grin that stops cameras mid-zoom. She waits, perfectly still, until Trump's words hang like smoke in the air. Then she leans forward, her voice low, sharp, and cutting enough to pierce the uproar. "Dead or loud, Mr. Trump," she says, "then silent while you rob America." The chamber detonates, shouts, screams, laughter, disbelief. Democrats leap to their feet in applause, Republicans howl in protest, reporters scramble to capture the line before it vanishes into the roar. The hashtags ignite instantly. Hashtag Crockett vs Trump rockets across every platform, the phrase replay in clips that will loop for days. Trump's face flushes crimson on the screen. He jabs his finger at the camera, spitting words like bullets. "She's nothing, she's weak, she's dangerous. This is why America is failing, because we let trash like her talk over patriots like J.D. Vance. This is chaos, this is disgraceful." His voice cracks with fury, the polished bluster slipping into raw anger, and the cameras catch it all. But Jasmine doesn't retreat. She tilts her head, her smile never faltering, eyes glinting like a blade. "Dangerous," she repeats, almost laughing. "The only danger here is letting you back in control. Because the last time America trusted you, it nearly cost us our democracy." The words land like cannon fire. The Democratic side erupts, the gallery bursts into applause, and even in the chaos, some Republicans shift uncomfortably, eyes flickering toward the cameras that capture their every move. Trump slams his hand down, the screen shaking as if the entire chamber rattled with him. "She is a disgrace. She should be removed." He bellows, but the desperation in his voice betrays the weakness in his fury. Jasmine sits back in her chair, calm, collected, her eyes never leaving his. She doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to pound the desk. Her silence between words speaks louder than his shouting. She has turned his volume against him, making his anger look small, making her composure look unbreakable. The chamber is no longer just a hearing. It is an arena, a dual broadcast to millions, where one woman's steady courage locks horns with the brute charisma of a former president. And as the world watches, breath caught in its throat, the question burns brighter than ever. Who wins when charisma clashes with courage? The chamber trembles under the weight of chaos. Trump's face burns across the giant screen, his voice thundering insults that ricochet off marble walls. She's pathetic, she's worthless, she's nothing but a stain on this institution. Spittle sprays as he jabs his finger at the camera, his volume rising, his words fraying into rage. His once commanding tone now sounds shrill, desperate, like a man clawing at control as it slips through his fingers. Jasmine leans forward, unshaken, her expression hardens into ice, her voice calm but venomous enough to cut the air. You, Mr. Trump, are nothing but a shadow of rot. A relic of corruption still clinging to power, poisoning everything you touch. And as for your loyal servant sitting beside me, she gestures toward Vance, without even looking at him. He is nothing more than a puppet too weak to hold the strings you dangle. Gasps detonate across the chamber. Democrats shoot to their feet, some covering their mouths in disbelief, others clapping despite the chair's frantic pounding of the gavel. Republicans erupt in fury, shouting over one another, veins bulging, fists pounding. The gallery howls, a wave of shock crashing through the rafters. Trump's face on the screen flushes a violent red, his eyes narrowing, his jaw tightening until it looks ready to snap. He barks like a cornered beast. You will regret this. You are a disgrace to this country. You're disgusting. You're dangerous. You're. The words stumble, stutter, losing rhythm. The insult machine sputters into incoherence. In the Democratic row, Brendan Bowl leans back, shaking his head with a grin, his voice low but caught by a hot mic. He's losing control. Reporters in the gallery seize on it instantly, fingers flying across keyboards. Within seconds, headlines bloom. Bowl, Trump losing control live, social media surges, hashtags colliding, hashtag shadow of rot, hashtag puppet Vance, hashtag Crockett vs Trump. A digital explosion broadcasting Jasmine's words into every corner of the nation. Trump tries again, louder, angrier. She's trash. That's all she ever be. Trash. His voice cracks on the word, echoing pitifully, the projection of a man unraveling before millions. And then Jasmine delivers the final strike. She leans into the microphone, eyes locked on the towering screen, her tone soft but lethal, her words slow enough to carve into history. If telling the truth makes me trash, then I will wear that title with pride. Because I would rather be the trash of truth than the crown of lies. The chamber erupts, Democrats roaring, Republicans screaming, reporters shouting into live feeds, the gavel hammering without end. The noise is deafening, the spectacle unmatched, the nation glued to every second. And yet in that chaos, one thing is clear. Trump, red-faced and sputtering, looks smaller than ever, diminished on his own stage. As the feed lingers on his contorted expression, the question slices into the air, impossible to ignore. Can Trump recover, or has she broken him? The chamber, still rattling from Jasmine's last blow, when she seizes the moment, her hand slamming a thick folder onto the desk with a crack that makes even the chair flinch. She holds up the report for all to see, the bold lettering of the Congressional Budget Office gleaming under the lights. Enough theatrics, she declares, her voice slicing through the uproar. Let's talk about facts. Let's talk about what your big beautiful bill really means. She flips open the pages, her eyes scanning like a blade across the lines, and then her words explode. 15.1 million Americans will lose their health care. Let me repeat that so no one pretends they didn't hear. 15.1 million. The chamber gasps as one. The sound like a wave crashing. Reporters jolt forward, fingers hammering at their phones. On screens across the nation, live tweets spike, hashtags ignite in neon fire. Hashtag 15 million. Hashtag healthcare scam. Hashtag math doesn't lie. Jasmine slams her hand against the report again, her voice rising with fury. This isn't my opinion. This isn't a campaign slogan. This is the math from your own government analysts. And it says plainly that millions will suffer, millions will die, because you put billionaire tax cuts above basic survival. Across the aisle, J.D. Vance lets out a short laugh, high-pitched and brittle, meant to sound dismissive but landing like glass cracking under pressure. He waves a hand toward the report, shaking his head. Oh, come on, Congresswoman. These reports are exaggerated, biased. His voice falters as he sees the cameras zooming on him, catching the sweat forming at his temples. The laugh dies in his throat, and the chamber watches him crumble in real time. Jasmine pounces, exaggerated. Tell that to the rural mother who will drive 2 hours only to watch her child stop breathing on the way. Biased. Tell that to the veteran whose chemo will be cut off halfway through treatment. Lies. Tell that to the 15 million Americans staring at their TV screens right now, wondering if they'll survive the year if your bill passes. Her words are thunderclaps, each one slamming the desk, each one amplified by the silence that follows. The gallery shifts uneasily. Some spectators cover their mouths, others wipe tears. The chamber, so loud minutes ago, is suffocating in its quiet, every breath heavy, every gaze locked on the woman who has turned statistics into death sentences. Trump's face looms on the giant screen, red and furious, but for once his voice doesn't boom. He mutters, his mouth moving with no sound. Vance shrinks in his chair, his smirk gone, his hands clutching the edges of the podium as if bracing for impact. Jasmine raises the report one last time, her voice now whisper, low but so sharp it pierces the silence. Numbers don't lie, and these numbers are written in blood. The words hang like a guillotine, the chamber holding its breath, the nation frozen at their screens. And the question pulses across every heart like a drumbeat, can he deny math written in blood? Jasmine doesn't let the silence cool, she reaches for another folder, thinner than the CB report but heavier with meaning. She opens it slowly, her hands steady, her voice controlled but edged with fury. I want to remind this chamber what those numbers look like in real life. Because behind every statistic is a beating heart. She reads the first page, her tone firm but trembling at the edges. This is from Maria, a single mother in Texas, raising 2 children on her own. She works 12-hour shifts at a diner and comes home to help with homework before collapsing into bed. Right now, Medicaid pays for her daughter's insulin. If this bill passes, that coverage disappears. Without it, her daughter will die. That's not speculation, that's a death warrant. The chamber exhales as one. Democrats bow their heads. A few in the gallery cry openly. The cameras pan to J.D. Vance, who forces a stiff blink, his lips pressed thin. Jasmine continues, turning the page with a deliberate snap. This letter is from John, a veteran in Pennsylvania. He served a tour overseas. He came home with cancer from toxic exposure. His treatment is long, brutal, and barely affordable as it is. Under your bill, his coverage will be cut off halfway. Do you know what happens when cancer treatment stops halfway? It spreads, it kills. That's what your so-called reform delivers to him. A slow death as thanks for his service. A loud groan echoes from the Democratic side. Even some Republicans shift uncomfortably, eyes fixed on their desks. But Jasmine doesn't pause, she flips to the final page, her voice lowering into something almost reverent. And here is Linda, a grandmother in Ohio. She held her family together after her husband passed, raising her grandkids, and their parents couldn't. She wrote me this, Congresswoman, I can live with less food. I can live with less heat, but I cannot live without my heart medication. If this bill passes, I will have to choose between paying rent or buying the pills that keep me alive. The gallery, silent now, except for the sound of muffled sobbing. The weight is unbearable, the air thick with sorrow and rage. Suddenly, a Republican voice breaks the moment, booming across the chamber. This is theatrics, this is manipulation. Another joins in, this has no place in a policy debate. Their voices rise, desperate to drown her out. But Jasmine doesn't flinch, she slams the folder shut, the crack loud enough to silence even the hecklers. She rises to her feet, her voice thundering now, each word like a hammer. You call it theatrics, I call it survival. They are not numbers. They are not talking points, they are lives. And if you cannot face their stories, then you have no business writing their deaths into law. The chamber roars, Democrats on their feet, the gallery erupting, reporters shouting into their microphones. Republicans try again to shout her down, but her words pierce the chaos, louder than the din, truer than the spin. And as America watches, unable to look away, the question strikes harder than any gavel. Can human stories defeat cold politics? The gallery, still vibrating from Jasmine's thunderous words, when J.D. Vance leans forward, his voice dripping with disdain, straining to regain ground. He forces a laugh, brittle, hollow, and shakes his head like a teacher scolding a child. "This is theatrics," he says, waving his hand toward the folder of testimonies as though swatting away an insect. Emotional manipulation. Policy isn't built on sob stories. It's built on hard reality. The words hang in the air like poison, dripping contempt onto every story Jasmine had just brought to life. For a moment, Republicans nod, relieved to hear someone finally push back. The sound of shuffled papers and muttered agreements rises from their side, like a faint shield. Cameras pivot toward Vance, hungry for his attempt at a comeback, recording the smirk tugging at his lips. But Jasmine doesn't give him the satisfaction. She doesn't even look down at her notes. She leans into the microphone, eyes locked on him with the cold, unflinching focus of a blade meeting its mark. Her voice is low, steady, and yet it lands with the force of an earthquake. "Theatrics, tell that to a dying child." The chamber implodes into silence. The protests vanish, the mutters collapse, even the ever-banging gavel stills midair, as though the chair himself can feel the weight of what has been unleashed. Jasmine doesn't blink. She continues, her voice quiet but searing, every word cutting deeper. Tell it to the little girl gasping for air when her inhaler runs dry. Tell it to the mother who has to watch her son's chemo drip stop because the insurance cut him off halfway. Tell it to the veteran who fought for this nation only to come home and be abandoned to cancer. Tell it to their faces, Mr. Vance. Look them in the eye and tell them this is just theatrics. The silence is unbearable now, suffocating. Every cough, every shuffle, every creak of the chamber's wooden benches echoes like thunder. The cameras zoom closer, tighter, hungry for the kill. On the Republican side, eyes dart away, some shifting uncomfortably, some lowering their heads. On the Democratic side, no one moves, no one breathes. They know they are witnessing a moment that will be replayed for years to come. In the gallery, someone sobs opally. Reporters type furiously, their headlines already writing themselves. Crockett shreds Vance. Tell that to a dying child. J.D. Vance tries to smile, but it falters before it reaches his eyes. He swallows, hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in full view of the cameras. His hands tighten around the edges of the podium, knuckles blanching. The sweat at his temple glistens under the lights, and for the first time, his mask of confidence slips completely. The camera sees it, zooming in on his pale face, his trembling lips, his silence louder than any protest he could muster. And as the nation watches, breath held, the question strikes with a force. The silence from Vance's collapse is still thick when suddenly a chair scrapes violently across the floor. Jordan leaps to his feet, his face flushed, his voice exploding through the chamber like a siren. "This is outrageous. This circus has gone on long enough. How dare you smear a man like J.D. Vance? How dare you insult the former president? This entire hearing is a disgrace." His words tumble over each other, his arms flailing, his fingers stabbing the air toward Jasmine as if he could pierce her with rage alone. The chamber jolts into chaos again. Republicans pound desks in rhythm with Jordan's shouts, echoing his fury, desperate to build a wall around their crumble in a lie. Democrats shout back, jeers rising, some waving him down with mocking hand gestures. Reporters snap photos like gunfire, their flashes lighting up the melee. Jasmine sits still at first, letting his anger spill unchecked, her eyes locked on him with the cold patience of a predator watching prey exhaust itself. When he finally pauses to breathe, she leans into her microphone, her voice steady, lethal in its precision. "Dead or nosy, Mr. Jordan, than a lapdog for billionaires," the words detonate. Gasps, laughter, applause, boos. The chamber splits open as though the walls themselves cracked. Democrats erupt, some pounding their fists in agreement, others grinning ear to ear. The gallery howls, the noise spilling over into the streets outside where crowds chant in unison, "Lapdog! Lapdog!" Within seconds, social media surges. #LapdogJordan rockets to the top of trending lists. Memes flooding timelines. Jordan on a leash, Jordan barking under a gilded table. Jordan photoshopped with billionaire puppeteers pulling his strings. Jordan's face twists crimson, his mouth opening and closing without sound, his fury now spectacle of impotence. Then shifts beside him, shrinking deeper into his chair, his pale face betraying that his savior has only deepened the hole. Across the Democratic benches, Brendan Bowl leans to a colleague, muttering with a smirk, "She's not just winning. She's dismantling them piece by piece." The chamber buzzes like a live wire, the nation glued to the screen, the spectacle now bigger than policy, bigger than debate. It has become survival theater, raw and unfiltered. And the question hangs heavy over the chaos, gripping every viewer. Will allies save Vance, or sink with him? The chamber is already teetering on the edge when Trump leans closer to the camera, his face so large on the screen it swallows the chamber whole. His voice booms, louder, harsher, veins straining in his neck. She is destroying America. She is a disgrace. Everything she says is a lie. He slams his fist against the desk, the sound thundering through the speakers, rattling the microphones, shaking the walls as if the chamber itself trembles under his rage. Republicans rise, clapping and chanting Trump, 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 like soldiers at a rally, but their cheers only fuel the chaos. Democrats shout back, fists pumping, their words drowned in the storm. Reporters scream over the nose, their voices cracking. Breaking news. Trump is live, raging in Congress, and then it happens, his voice cracks. The booming confidence fractures into a shrill or rasp. He tries to recover, shouting louder, but the desperation bleeds through. I made America great. I am America. Without me, you have nothing. Nothing. His fist hammers again and again, his words devolving into incoherence, syllables spilling like broken glass. The camera pans to Jasmine. She doesn't shout, she doesn't flinch. She rises slowly from her seat, every movement deliberate, every second magnified by the silence her stillness creates. When she leans into the microphone, her voice is low, calm, but cutting enough to slice through the storm. America regrets believing you once, we won't twice. The chamber detonates, gasps collide with applause. Democrats erupting in thunderous roars, the gallery chanting her name. Reporters drop their pens, their jaws open, scrambling to type as hashtags explode. Hashtag we won twice. Hashtag Trump meltdown. Hashtag Crockett vs Trump. The sound is deafening, a tidal wave of approval that drowns out even the mighty roar of Trump's loyalists. On screen, Trump freezes for a split second, stunned, before the fury consumes him. His face burns crimson, his mouth twists, and he pounds the desk again and again like a drum of desperation. His words collapse into a torrent of no's, half-formed insults, incoherent rambling. She's trash. She's evil. She's. The sentence dies on his lips, his voice shredded, his rage spilling into fragments that no longer carry power but pity. Jasmine stands tall, unflinching, her eyes locked on the screen as though staring him down through the lens itself. Her composure makes his unraveling look even more grotesque, his volume collapsing against her silence, his fury disintegrating against her calm steel. The chamber watches, breathless. Democrats lean forward, eyes wide. Republicans glance nervously at one another, no longer cheering, some lowering their heads, the cracks in loyalty widening for all to see. Reporters whisper to each other with disbelief, their cameras capturing a former president in real time, not as a titan, but as a man broken. And as the screen lingers on Trump, his face contorted, his voice collapsing into no's, the question echoes louder than any gavel. Has he ever looked weaker? The screen fractures into a storm of news clips. CNN blares red banners. Crockett crushes Vance, confronts Trump live. MSNBC flashes polling numbers scrolling upward. Approval for the big beautiful bill plummeting overnight. Fox News anchors bark furiously, but their outrage feels drowned beneath the tidal wave of hashtags roaring across every platform. Hashtag Crockett vs Trump. Hashtag we won twice. Hashtag 15 million lives. Clips of families flash across the montage. A mother in Kansas hugging her son's inhaler, whispering, "She fought for us." A veteran in Pennsylvania saluting the television screen. Nurses gathered in break rooms, clapping as Jasmine's words echo again. This bill is not reform. It's execution. The nation is split, yes, but the fire she lit refuses to die. In her office hours later, the roar feels far away. The chamber is empty. The streets outside quiet now, but Jasmine sits alone, shoulders slumped, the weight of the night pressing down. Her eyes drift toward the window, where the Capitol dome glows against the darkness, an unyielding monument to battles fought and battles yet to come. She exhales slowly, the kind of breath that carries both victory and exhaustion, both triumph and cost. Her reflection in the glass stares back at her, tired eyes, clenched jaw, a warrior who just survived the blood sport of politics, but knows the war is far from won. The cheers outside are fading, but the silence inside feels heavier, more dangerous. For every person cheering her name, there's another sharpening a knife. She leans her head against the window pane, whispering words no microphone can catch. Was it enough? The montage fades to black, the question echoing like a drumbeat across the nation. Can one night change America's course? The morning after feels less like victory and more like the opening shot of another war. Headlines split the nation in two. Right-wing networks blast in unison. Crockett unhinged, editorials sneer, calling her a radical loudmouth who disrespected the presidency. GOP strategists swarm cable panels, threatening hearings, investigations, punishment. One senator snarls on live TV, "We will make sure her career ends where it began, in obscurity." But outside the bubble of power, America answers differently. In Dallas, families gather on courthouse steps with handmade signs, 15 million lives matter. In Pittsburgh, veterans march with fur poles strapped to their backs in solidarity with John, the cancer patient Jasmine invoked. Churches hold vigils for hospitals on the brink of closure. Clips flood social media, ordinary people chanting her name, echoing the words she etched into history. Better loud than silent. Jasmine stands before a crowd in her district, her voice softer now but no less commanding. She holds the hand of a mother clutching her child, then looks out at the sea of faces, many tear-streaked, many defiant. "This fight is bigger than me," she says, her voice cracking with both exhaustion and resolve. "It is about every life they tried to turn into a number. I may be their target, but it is all of you they fear, because they know the truth cannot be buried." The crowd erupts, not in polished chants, but in raw human voices, thousands screaming together until their cries shake the night. Cameras capture it, broadcasting a movement growing from her defiance. Yet in Washington's marble halls, whispers sharpen into daggers. Files are opened, smear campaigns drafted. The machine is moving, and the nation wonders, breath caught in its throat, will the system crush her, or will she reshape it? The chamber is empty now, the shouting, the chaos, the thunder of clapping desks have faded into memory. Only the echo remains, the lights are dimmed, casting long shadows across the polished wood. At the center sits Jasmine Crockett, alone, her hands folded on the desk where she had made history hours before. The silence is heavy, but she does not shrink from it. She stares straight ahead, eyes burning with the weight of everything that has passed, and everything still to come. Her voice rises softly, carried not to the chamber but to the conscience of a nation. "I fight not for power, but for people. Not for history books, but for children yet unborn. I fight so that when a mother reaches for her child's medicine, she does not have to choose between hope and hunger. I fight so that veterans who gave their lives to this country are not abandoned when they come home. I fight so that the poorest among us are not forgotten, while billionaires buy golden crowns with blood-stained dollars." The camera circles slowly, capturing her in silhouette against the great dome beyond the window. The music swells, strings trembling, drums beating like a heart. She lifts her chin, her voice stronger now, defiant, resonant. "I did not come here to bow, I came here to stand. And I will stand until the truth outlives the lies, until justice outshines the cruelty, until courage drowns out the fear they sell like poison." She rises, placing her hand on the desk one last time, her voice dropping to a whisper that cuts sharper than a scream. "The war for justice never ends, but tonight, courage won a battle." The screen fades to black, the music holds one final note, suspended in the air like a challenge. And then, across the silence, the question appears in bold white letters: "If Jasmine can rise against giants, what will you stand up for?" In the end, Jasmine's battle reminds us that truth is not measured by how loud the powerful shout, but by the courage of one voice refusing to be silenced. Her defiance teaches us that numbers on a page are not abstractions, they are lives, families, futures. And when injustice rises, it only takes one person willing to stand for millions to spark change. The real question is not whether Jasmine can fight for us, but whether we will fight alongside her. So tell me, when your moment comes, what will you stand up for? Thank you for watching until this moment and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.